Today we'll talk about customer centricity with Dr. Irene Rosenfeld. Irene has been the CEO of several customer-centric businesses. She was the CEO of Frito-Lay, and then she was the chair and the CEO of Kraft Foods. There she created Mondalez, the largest snacks company in the world, by splitting the global snacks business off from the North America grocery business. Irene has been named one of the most powerful women in the world by the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, and Forbes. In fact, in 2011, she was ranked number 1 in the Financial Times and Fortune. Dr. Rosenfeld earned 3 degrees from Cornell, a BA in psychology, and MS in business, and a PhD in marketing. Irene, thank you for taking time for this discussion, and welcome.
I'm happy to be here, Manoj. Thank you.
So let me begin with a question that is often asked. Most companies claim to be customer-centric, yet more than 50% of the new products, the new services, and many of the new promotional campaigns launched by these companies fail because the company managers are unable to predict their customers' reactions, the customer behavior. Why do so-called customer-centric companies routinely fail to predict customer behavior?
In fairness, I actually think it's partly because the consumer doesn't always know what he or she wants. If you think about the iPhone, there's always an excellent example given of something that we could never have suggested we needed one of those. But then, of course, now that we have them, we don't know how to live without them. I remember many years ago, we had a Kool-Aid product, which is a powdered beverage drink, and it came in an aluminum canister. And one of our biggest consumer issues was that as you needed to use a can opener to open up the package. And one of the biggest challenges was that as you opened the can, the shavings from the top of the can would fall into the powder. And people would complain about that. It was our number 1 consumer complaints was metal shavings in the can. And we then worked very hard to develop a plastic package so that the consumer could just rip off the top and they wouldn't have to deal with this. And when we took it to consumers and focus groups, they said, oh, I don't need that. I just open my can, I get out my magnet, and I just pick up the shavings, and then I drink my Kool-Aid. And it's such a great example of the fact that the consumer often doesn't even realize, even in cases where they have a product that's been developed and they have an issue that the company can solve for them, they don't even realize somehow how they are already working around the issue. So it's not about whether the company wants to be consumer-centric. I think certainly all consumer companies, that's the essence of who we are. But the reality is, as you said, often the consumer themselves wouldn't know about some of the opportunities that might be available to them. And then sometimes they really can't even express it, even when you give them an option that would solve their very problem.
That's fascinating. Very interesting. So it's not necessary for a company to desire to be customer-centric. Even if you want to be customer-centric, it's difficult because the customers or the consumers don't know what they want. And sometimes their self-reports of what they want are not entirely predictive of their own behavior. So it's really, really
Yes.
difficult for a CEO or a corporation to be customer-centric, even when they want to be.
I just mentioned the other experience that I had that is also a challenge, is that often the managers in the company get in their own way. So I think, for example, my company was owned by a tobacco company for many years, and they made Marlboro cigarettes. And Marlboro was known to be a very strong cigarette. And over time, there was a desire, consumers wanted a lighter version. And so they were looking at how to create a medium or a mild version. And their first thought was, we'll call it Marlboro. And the managers at the time said, oh, no, that can't be Marlboro. Marlboro is strong. And you can't call a mild or a moderate tobacco Marlboro. And in fact, they were so very wrong. Consumer testing subsequently, and actually the product out in the marketplace, proved that Marlboro was the strongest tobacco trademark out there. And it would have been an enormously missed opportunity if the company had chosen to go with another trademark to capture the users that wanted a mild or a more moderate tobacco.
That's very interesting. You added like just one more wrinkle for why customer centricity is difficult. So customers don't know what they want. Oftentimes what they say as what they want is not accurate or not reliable. And then managers' expectations or their lay beliefs about what customers want often is completely off the mark, and which leads to incorrect predictions about how customers behave. That's fascinating. Which kind of brings me to my next question. If you are the CEO of an organization who is very focused on making your organization customer-centric, what do? How can a CEO make an organization customer-centric? And you've been the CEO of many customer-centric companies like Frito-Lay and Kraft and Mondalez. How did you make your organization more customer-centric?
Well, it was critically important that our employees, particularly our marketers, get out and about, and that they talk to customers, that they talk to consumers, that they get out into the marketplace, that they experience the products themselves. Because without that intelligence, it's very, very difficult to be consumer-centric. And you need to hear consumers talking about the products to understand how they interact with the product. And that really makes them much more informed marketers who can then develop the kinds of products that are necessary. I'd also say, though, it is equally important that the R&D people get out and about, because the truth of the matter is every day, good R&D people are developing new ideas. And the more they can tailor those ideas to address real consumer issues, it makes an enormous difference. And I would also say it's critically important that consumer centricity be at the center of who the company is. And in our case, it was very important that we capture that in our mission statement. And many years ago, Kraft had a mission statement of Kraft at every table, at every meal, which was a very noble idea, I think, and clearly had great revenue and profit implications, but it didn't necessarily speak to consumer centricity. And today, the company has a mission of providing the right snack at the right time, in the right place, made the right way. And that's all about understanding your consumer and figuring out what you can do to help to meet their needs. The other thing is, I would say, I think increasingly companies are realizing the need to have that understanding. Often they pay lots of money to do demographics and ethnographic research, but often these are very big fat reports that are quite dry. They're just filled with a lot of statistics, and it's very hard for those ideas that are embedded in these reports to come to life. And one of the things that we started to do in our company is to actually bring some of these ethnographies to life. I remember I was visiting our operation in Malaysia a number of years ago, and as I arrived at the office building, this colleague came running out wearing little shorts, in his school uniform. It was an adult-sized school uniform, and he was trying to convey to us his understanding of what their target audience looked like, and bring the whole ethnography to life in a way that one couldn't have gotten by just reading about it.
It's very interesting and thought-provoking. Let me kind of summarize. I think you've given us a lot of things to think about. Let me try to summarize what you said. I think one of the most important things you said is that big fat market research reports will not guarantee customer centricity or consumer centricity. You can spend a lot of money on yes. research and get reports and do sophisticated analysis, but that does not guarantee that your company will be consumer centric or customer centric. your marketing managers or your sales people who are at the forefront, even they can be wrong to the point that you made earlier, and therefore it's important for them to be out and about, immerse themselves in the consumer environments. I like the story about the gentleman in Malaysia who came out and tried to personify the consumer so that it kind of brings to life the sentiments of a consumer and how they go about making the decisions. And it has to come top down from the leadership. It has to be a mission. I like the Kraft example that you gave, that it has to be a part of your company's goals, and it should be very clearly articulated. And I think there's another very, very important insight that you shared, that the company is not sufficient for the marketing people and the CEO to be customer-centric. Even your operations people, even your R&D people should go about and immerse themselves in the consumer's mindsets so that the entire organization holistically is consumer-centric. That's very, very insightful, and also kind of adds to the previous question, lets us know why it is so difficult for organizations to be consumer-centric. I want to now focus on a topic that is gaining a lot of attention in the media and also in academic research, which is about the role of customer centricity. What is the goal of customer centricity? So when we talk about customer centricity, many companies talk about customer centricity. They talk about customer centricity being employed to improve their profits. CEOs want to predict customer behavior so that they can sell more and therefore have greater profits. But customer centricity might also mean looking at consumers' welfare. For example, a CEO could use customer insights to increase smoking, but that might not be necessarily in the interest of the customer. Or a candy company can get kids addicted, use customer insights to get kids addicted to candy, but that might not be in the interest of the kids' consumer welfare, right? So how, as a CEO, how should you think about this? On the one hand, you have the responsibility of managing your profits and your P&L. On the other hand, you might also want to think about the overall welfare of your consumers and more broadly, societal well-being. As a CEO, how do you manage what might be sometimes competing goals?
Those two goals often feel like they're in conflict, Manoj, but I have to say the best companies figure out a way to bring those two objectives together. The reality is large companies, particularly companies like mine, have the reach and the resources to be able to accomplish some societal agenda items in a way that couldn't happen anywhere else. And so I do believe it is incumbent upon these large companies as a member of our society to help to address societal issues. That said, though, I do believe that the closer that those issues can be brought to the business of the company, the more likely it is that those issues then can remain at the forefront of the company's efforts. For example, in our company for many years, we allowed our local operations to determine what issues were most important in their local marketplaces. And then our philanthropy in those areas was directed into those efforts. And in many cases, so for example, literacy was an important issue, which clearly is a societal challenge. But the fact is, a food company can't do that much other than through donations to help the issue of literacy. And so we chose to bring our philanthropic efforts back to the subject of food security and obesity, which were the areas that we felt were most relevant to our products and the places where I thought by our focus in these areas, these initiatives could be sustainable over time because they wouldn't just be sort of the flavor of the year. So it is a challenge. I don't believe that they have to be at odds with one another. I do believe you can do well by doing good. But the fact of the matter is you do have an obligation, a financial obligation to deliver returns to shareholders. And it is critical that any of your efforts play within that larger envelope.
That's interesting and thought-provoking again. So you've identified two ways in which companies can make a meaningful difference in society. One is, of course, you have philanthropic options to contribute to societal well-being. But I like the fact that when you try to do something that is closer to within the scope of your business, for example, if a food company decides to also address issues of obesity and food insecurity, then it becomes even more meaningful. So, and if you can find a way to meet your obligations towards your shareholders and also address these issues while doing that, it really becomes an inspiring, customer centricity becomes an inspiring value within your organization.
Well, inspiring and I think sustainable as a result.
Right. So we can keep on pursuing profits and we can keep on doing this without feeling guilty and without feeling bad about it. That's really very good advice for our students and for budding managers. Thank you very much, Irene. As always, it's very good to hear from you on all these topics.
My pleasure, Manoj. Bye-bye.
Thank you.